So we've looked at the allegorical aspect of these parables, and we've really determined that Christianity really didn't have any need to insert the replacement theology parable, the replacement theology allegory, where the old is out, the new is in, the old is incompatible with the new is incompatible with the old, and then supplying their own meanings to the parables with the allegorical application of Judaism is the old way and Christianity is the new way. Israel is the old people, the Gentile church is the new people. The law of Moses is the old law, the law of Christ is the new law. The Tanakh, the Old Testament, is the old part of God's promises and dealings with people. The New Testament is the new way of God dealing with people, et cetera, et cetera. So the whole replacement theology package in itself is bad news for Israel and good news for the body of Messiah or Christianity, et cetera, et cetera. And I say bad news I say bad news for Israel because what religious Jew living in any day or age, let alone just Yeshua's age, but our age as well, what religious Jew would welcome an explanation to Yeshua's teachings that equated to a replacement of his own people group, his own religious way of life, his own value system, things like that? What we're terming this section Old Man, New Man, and Messianic Judaism. And what I can determine is that a better way to read through this passage, if we're going to go with the allegory, is to understand when Yeshua is challenging old versus new, and he's using these elements in the parable, that he's not talking about old belief systems and new belief systems. And yes, there are some elements to that because we all have our own belief systems that aren't in line with God's word. But what he's really talking about is challenging the old way of thinking when it comes to what's valuable to God if it didn't start with God's values to begin with. Case in point, we all have our own traditions and religious rules that we attach to God's word. And so in our old way of thinking, we think that this is what's more important. And so if that clouds God's word, then yes, that has to go and Yeshua has to bring in reform. So let's, by the way, one last thing. In verse 39 of Luke, no one after drinking old wine desires new, for he says the old is good. I said that last week that I would show you in different versions that some texts read the good is better. Let me open up Luke here. Luke chapter 5, verse 39. And you can see I've got parallel versions pulled up for you on the screen. One second, let me shrink that just a little bit. There we go. So we've got the New International Version. No one after drinking old wine wants new, for they say the old is better. Notice it doesn't say the old is good. It says the old is better. The NLT translation, the old is just fine, they say. The ESV we already read. The old is good. The Berean Study Bible, the old is better. The literal Bible, Berean literal, same thing. The old is better. KJV, the old is better. New KJV, same thing. Old is better. NASB, old is fine. The point I'm bringing up is, and let me just use just these two to demonstrate what I'm trying to get at. Between the KJV and the NASB, they are kind of representatives of two different schools of manuscript families, what I call the A and the B, the Alexandrinus and the Vaticanus, or the B, or the majority text, and things like that. So we have two they're not really competing with one another. They just represent two different points in history when we as humans found the ancient texts and begin to interpret them and things like that. One is a little older, but closer to the source where they were written. One is a little bit newer, but farther away, or something like that. I'll put something on the screen in post-production that shows the primary differences. But what we end up with is a one-word difference in the very end of the verse. One of the textual families has the Greek equivalent of the English word better. That's the KJV family, and all the other Bible translations that follow that majority textus receptus, a majority text family, which I think is what I'm calling the B version. And then the NASB that you can see on your screen follows the the Alexandrinus, if I remember family, and it has a different one-word difference. It says the old is fine or the old is good. So that's why you have a difference. Like KJV says the old is better, but ESV says the old is good. Not a huge theological difference between the word good and better. I'm just trying to show it to you just so you know why I keep saying sometimes the old is good or the old is better. But here's where it gains some traction and importance for our study. If indeed Yeshua is teaching some form of old is out, new is in, and it refers to religious belief systems or ways in which to approach God, where we don't have to keep the Old Testament anymore. We now just keep the New Testament. The old way of approaching God by keeping the commandments is out. And the new way of approaching God is by faith in Jesus, and that's what's in. If that is true, which is what Christianity has brought to the table of discussion, which is why I'm bringing it up, by the way, answer to my study buddy friend who asked me that last week. I think he already knows the answer, but I'm just reinforcing it for people who weren't there while we had this dialogue.